A United States Navy vessel is under hostile control. It was not taken by pirates. It was not seized by an enemy warship. In the hypermodern port of Singapore, the USNS Red River, a critical asset of the Military Sealift Command, was boarded and impounded by civilian bailiffs armed with a court order. Is this an isolated legal dispute over maritime commerce? A bureaucratic nightmare unfolding half a world away? Or is this the first shot in a new kind of war? A sophisticated lawfare campaign designed by Tehran to use the West's own legal system as a weapon, choking American military supply lines and paralyzing the Pentagon in a conflict fought not on the battlefield, but in the courtroom? The incident began at 0600 hours, local time. The USNS Red River, a civilian-crewed cargo ship under long-term contract to the U.S. Navy, was finalizing its preparations to depart for Yokosuka, Japan. Its cargo was mundane but essential. Containerized spare parts for F-35 fighter jets, advanced medical supplies for naval hospitals, and pallets of specialized rations for forward-deployed Marine units. It was the lifeblood of logistics, the unglamorous but vital work that sustains American power across the Indo-Pacific. Then they came, not soldiers, but lawyers and local law enforcement. They presented the ship's captain with a writ of attachment. It was an ironclad legal document, issued by the International Maritime Arbitration Chamber, a respected trade tribunal based in Hamburg, Germany, over 6,000 miles away. The document cited a Panamanian shell corporation, Oceanic Transit Solutions S.A., as the plaintiff. The claim was for an alleged breach of an obscure shipping contract from 1978, a ghost from the past, weaponized in the present. The legal argument is a masterclass in obfuscation. It alleges that a small shipping company acquired by a larger conglomerate, which was then absorbed by another, which was eventually purchased by the American firm that currently owns the Red River, had defaulted on a fuel payment 45 years ago. With decades of accumulated interest and penalties, the claim now totaled an astonishing $275 million. The Hamburg court, following its procedures, issued the prejudgment attachment order, allowing the plaintiff to seize assets as collateral. They didn't seize a corporate bank account, they seized a strategic asset of the United States military. The Pentagon was caught completely flat-footed. The Judge Advocate General's Corps, the military's legal arm, is trained for the laws of war, not the intricacies of German commercial arbitration. Initial diplomatic protests to the Singaporean government were met with a polite but firm response. Singapore is a nation of laws. The court order is valid. Their hands are tied. The USNS Red River is now trapped. Its vital cargo is in limbo. The 7th Fleet's operational readiness is now directly impacted by a lawsuit filed by a company that, according to initial intelligence reports, has no office, no employees, and no other known business activities. It exists only on paper, a corporate phantom with the power to paralyze a superpower. Then came the second strike. This is Andreas Papandreou Air Base in Cyprus. Less than 12 hours after the Singapore incident, a C-130 transport, chartered by U.S. Air Mobility Command to ferry sensitive signals intelligence equipment to allies in the Levant, was grounded. As it refueled, Cypriot authorities approached the flight crew with a court order of their own. This one was from a trade tribunal in Vienna, Austria. The plaintiff was a different ghost. Global Air Logistics GmbH, a company registered in the corporate secrecy haven of Liechtenstein. The claim was similar, a tangled, ancient contractual dispute, this time related to air cargo insurance from the 1980s. The result was the same. A critical U.S. military mission was halted, not by a surface-to-air missile, but by a process server. This is no longer a coincidence. It is a coordinated, multi-pronged attack. As analysts at the National Security Agency began a frantic deep dive, they uncovered the invisible hand connecting these disparate events. The financial architecture behind both Oceanic Transit Solutions and Global Air Logistics is a labyrinth of offshore accounts and shadowy trusts designed to be untraceable. But the NSA has tools for breaking such codes. Using financial intelligence and signals intercepts, they followed the money. The trail led through the Caribbean, through the heart of European private banking, and then took a sharp turn. The final nodes in the network, the ultimate source of the funding for this global legal assault, were a series of exchange houses in Dubai. Exchange houses long identified by the U.S. Treasury Department as primary money laundering hubs for Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. This is the new battlefield. It is a war of attrition fought on balance sheets and legal dockets. The IRGC, masters of asymmetric warfare, have evolved. They understand that sinking a U.S.-flagged tanker in the Strait of Hormuz invites a massive, kinetic, military response. But entangling the Pentagon in a dozen international jurisdictions, bleeding it through 1,000 legal cuts, is an attack for which the United States has no immediate countermeasure. It's brilliant, and it's terrifying. They have turned the West's greatest strength, the rule of law, into its greatest vulnerability. The U.S. cannot simply send a SEAL team to reclaim the Red River from the Singapore Port Authority. To do so would be a flagrant violation of the sovereignty of a key partner nation, creating a diplomatic crisis of unimaginable proportions. They cannot ignore the court orders, as that would undermine the very international legal framework the United States itself helped to build. The Pentagon is forced to play the game on the IRGC's chosen field. They are hiring expensive international law firms in Hamburg, Vienna, and Nicosia, preparing motions, and posting multi-million-dollar bonds just to get their own assets moving again. This is the true objective, not to win these absurd lawsuits, but to clog the system, to impose friction and cost on every single aspect of American military logistics. Every civilian contractor, every shipping line, every air charter service that does business with the Department of Defense is now looking over its shoulder. Insurance premiums for military-related cargo are already spiking on the London market. Several European freight companies have reportedly begun refusing U.S. military contracts, citing the unacceptable legal risk. The full scale of the Iranian operation is only now becoming clear. A classified memo, leaked from within the Defense Intelligence Agency, reveals a far more chilling reality. The incidents in Singapore and Cyprus are not isolated probes. They are the public face of a massive, synchronized campaign. The DIA memo, codenamed Project Argus, has identified a watch list of over 70 American and NATO-affiliated logistical assets. This includes not just ships and aircraft, but land-based warehouses in allied countries, fuel depots contracted to third-party suppliers, and even specific shipments of component parts being moved by commercial carriers like FedEx and DHL. Dozens of lawsuits, all pre-prepared and funded by the IRGC network, have been filed by a constellation of over 30 ghost corporations. They are lying dormant in courts from Brussels to Seoul, waiting for the signal to activate, to file injunctions, and to grind the machinery of Western military power to a halt. The Pentagon is in a state of controlled panic. The situation is unprecedented. The JAG Corps is building a new task force just to deal with this lawfare threat, but they are outnumbered and outmaneuvered. The IRGC has had years to prepare this complex legal minefield. They have seeded the global legal system with dozens of tripwires, and now they are beginning to activate them one by one. The cost is already mounting into the hundreds of millions in legal fees and bonds, without a single bullet being fired. This war isn't about territory. It's about tempo. It's about disrupting the deployment cycle, delaying reinforcements, and creating a strategic paralysis that could give Iran a critical window of opportunity in a future crisis. It is a siege, not of a city, but of a global logistics network. A priority call flashes on the main screen in the Pentagon's National Military Command Center. It's a secure video link to the U.S. Embassy in Abu Dhabi. The face of the ambassador appears. He is pale, his expression grave. He doesn't waste time with pleasantries. He reports that the port authorities at Jebel Ali, the U.S. Navy's busiest and most important overseas port, have just been served. It is another injunction, this one from a commercial court in Brussels, Belgium. The injunction is a preemptive lien. It doesn't target a contracted supply vessel. It names 5 United States Navy warships currently taking on supplies at the port: an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, 2 littoral combat ships, a fleet oiler, and an amphibious assault ship. The lawsuit claims they are attachable assets of the United States government, which is now named as the primary defendant in a new, multi-billion-dollar case filed by another IRGC shell company. They are no longer just targeting the supply chain. They are now coming directly for the fleet. The ambassador takes a breath, his voice steady but strained as he delivers the message. "Sir, they're trying to legally seize the 5th Fleet." The line goes silent. For a moment, nobody in the National Military Command Center speaks. The idea is so audacious, so utterly outside the established rules of conflict, that it borders on the absurd. Seizing a commercial freighter is one thing, but filing a lien against a sovereign warship in a foreign port? It's a declaration of war disguised as a legal filing. But as the shock subsides, a colder, more terrifying question begins to form. How did they do this? How did they know the exact operational window? How did they find a court in Brussels willing to even entertain such a motion against assets belonging to a foreign military? The precision is impossible. The timing is perfect. It's like the enemy has a copy of the Pentagon's playbook. Or maybe they helped write it. What if this isn't just an Iranian operation? What if the brain behind this entire campaign, the architect of Project Argus, isn't an IRGC general, but someone who intimately understands the West's own legal system? Someone who knows exactly where the cracks are because they helped put them there? This suspicion sends a jolt through the U.S. intelligence community. The NSA, shifting from financial tracking to linguistic analysis, begins running the text of every lawsuit through their powerful pattern recognition systems. They are looking for a ghostwriter, a single authorial voice, and they find one, a distinct legal fingerprint, a unique combination of English common law precedent, complex EU commercial statutes, and obscure maritime conventions. It is a style one analyst calls maliciously brilliant. The trail no longer points just to Dubai. It now leads to a series of encrypted servers in Switzerland and, unbelievably, to a server farm located just outside of London. The intelligence is fragmented, but a name begins to surface from the digital noise. Not an Iranian name, a Western name. Dr. Alastair Finch, a brilliant, reclusive legal theorist, formerly a high-level consultant for both NATO and the Pentagon's own Judge Advocate General's Corps. A man who 10 years ago wrote the definitive doctrinal paper on the U.S. military's key logistical vulnerabilities to lawfare. A man who then, without a trace, vanished. The manhunt for Alastair Finch was the most unusual in modern history. It wasn't a search for a terrorist in a cave, but for a ghost in the machine of global law and finance. The digital breadcrumbs he left were deliberate, arrogant, a trail of intellectual vanity. The trail didn't lead to a bunker in Tehran or a safe house in Damascus. It led to a secluded, ultra-modern glass villa perched on a cliffside overlooking Lake Geneva. It was a place of quiet wealth, academic isolation, and profound moral corruption. Finch hadn't sold out for ideology. He'd done it to prove a point. To prove he was smarter than the system he once served. While a Swiss tactical team was quietly put on standby, the real counterattack was launched not with helicopters, but with a keyboard. In the Pentagon, the newly formed JAG task force had their moment of revelation. They couldn't fight dozens of individual lawsuits. They had to attack the foundation. They had to attack the very legitimacy of the plaintiffs. The United States government did something unprecedented. It invoked executive orders designed for sanctioning rogue states and terrorist financiers. Working with the Treasury Department, the State Department officially designated all 32 shell corporations as transnational criminal organizations, acting as financial arms of the IRGC. They weren't legitimate commercial entities. They were weapons. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic for Finch's plan. The moment the designation went public, the global banking system, bound by U.S. sanctions law, automatically froze every account associated with those entities. The funding for the lawsuits, the millions in bonds, retainers, and filing fees, evaporated in a nanosecond. The engine of Project Argus seized. In Geneva, Alastair Finch watched his empire of chaos crumble on a bank of monitors. One by one, his tickers showed account frozen. His secure communications went dead. His meticulously crafted legal architecture was being dismantled in real time by the brute force of sovereign power. He had used the law as a weapon, and the law had just turned on him. Finch didn't resist. When the operators found him, he was simply standing by the window, a small, bitter smile on his face, looking out at the calm waters of the lake. He had conducted the first great symphony of lawfare, and for a few critical days, he had brought a superpower to its knees. He had lost, but he had proven his terrifying thesis. The war for Jebel Ali was over. But the war for the new battlefield had just begun. The weapons are no longer just missiles and tanks. They are lawsuits, financial instruments, and digital ghosts. The front is no longer a line on a map. It's everywhere, hidden in plain sight, within the very systems we rely on to survive. To understand the conflicts of the 21st century, you can't just follow the troops. You have to follow the money, the data, and the law. You have to understand the new rules of engagement. To see the whole board, you need to be on the front line of information. Subscribe to Breaking_, the_front.